Hello everyone, welcome back to Taylor Talks. I'm Taylor and I have a wonderful guest here with me today. We're going to be talking about some really important things, and I'm really glad that he's here to talk about this because it can be a difficult subject, but it's something that I feel a lot of people really do need to know about. So thank you, Alan, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Taylor, thank you for having me. I know you're stepping out of your zone here a little bit today.
Just a little bit.
I've watched a lot of your podcasts. Your podcasts are usually very uppity and all that, and we're going to try to keep that this way today, you know, in talking about what we're getting ready to talk about.
Yeah,
so
thanks
again for having me on this beautiful spring day.
I know, it's storming. But so, Alan, give me some of your background.
My background was, let's see, I was a very active through, I was one of the very lucky ones. I actually got to drive one of the Bigfoot race trucks for years.
Oh, wow.
That took me all over the United States, and that's what allowed me to meet my wife out in San Bernardino, California. Met her late in life, 2003, married in 2007, and everything up until this point of what we're getting ready to talk about. Everything has been great, you know, but I do like to let everyone know that we had a very active lifestyle. And I know, you know, we're getting ready to talk about Alzheimer's disease, you know, and which is not a fun subject to talk about, but it doesn't have to be such a downer thing all the time. So, and that's what it was. When I met her in, like I said, 2003. She actually had the opportunity to go on the road with me. We ran a semi truck all over the United States, did all kinds of different races. So that's what I'd like everybody to know, that we weren't just the homebodies that were living there, that a lot of people, you know, look at this disease as being more of an older person disease or something like that. She definitely got diagnosed, you know, at an early age. So.
Yeah, well, and that's what everyone thinks of, like you said, the homebodies, and you know, so they don't really think about it.
Yeah, and it's not that way at all.
Yeah,
so it's not that way at all. So.
Wow. So let's kind of get more into it. So with you, so you are her caregiver. So how has that really affected you? I mean, what's your day-to-day like?
Well, I tell you, let's step back for just a minute. Let's give the diagnosis and how we got to that part of it, because that is such a very important part of the disease, is knowing
how she even got diagnosed.
Where this is going and how we got there. We, like I said, we totally love each other completely, and we were motorcycle riders, boats, we were into everything, so we were always go
doing it all,
and no arguments, like, you know, I mean, I hate to say it that way, but we had just a fantastic lifestyle, and we did really good together. And then 2016 rolled around, and I really started noticing, and that was the worst year for us. 2016 ended up with me starting to notice different things with Debbie, not being able to remember things, and then it just progressively gets worse from that, as it does for all caregivers that are starting to see this.
Moment, like when that first started happening, did you realize what was happening?
Oh no, I was one of the lucky ones going through life. My parents are still alive into their late years. My grandfathers, they all died of old age, so I never really understood or knew what Alzheimer's was. I didn't even know how to pronounce the word, like we were talking about earlier. And when this came about, but I knew that there was a problem, you know, and it would get down to me just saying, "Hey, Deb, it's time to get ready to go." "Oh, where are we going?" "Oh, we're going to the party that I told you about." "Well, you never told me about a party." "Honey, yes, I did tell you about a party. I've told you about this party." And that just keeps progressing into more arguments and everything like that. By the end of 2016, I knew that we had probably more of a problem than what either one of us were wanting to admit to. So at that time, you just set up with your primary care doctor. You go into your primary care doctor. They do a little bitty test on you. Your primary care doctor will give you the okay and sign you up to go see a neurologist at that time. The neurologist is going to run a series of tests, whether it be blood tests, MRIs, looking at the brain, looking for damage, anything like that.
So when she was going through this, like, did she realize there was a problem?
Well, we had talked about it, yes, and she did.
Okay.
She was very coherent about everything that was going on. She knew that she was having memory problems, but it's always the last thing on your mind is that it's going to be Alzheimer's. So as you start to go into these tests, they'll do a blood work test, and it all comes back normal, and all of your loved ones and all of your friends are like, great.
Yeah.
And me on the other side is going, no, that's not.
Because you
that's
knew.
not
You
great.
knew.
That's
yeah.
what we wish it would have been.
Mhm.
MRI turned out great. The brain looks fantastic. All of that. That's a bad. No, we wanted something. I mean, as bad as it sounds, you wanted it to be something in there. You wanted it to be a tumor or something that was going to be
You wanted
fixed.
to,
Sure.
say it's due to this or it's due to that.
Yeah, you wanted to be able to point to anything except the end.
Yeah.
In the end where it's going to be. Then they set you up with neuropsych testing, which takes 6, 7, 8 hours a day. They take her into the back and they just go through a series of tests.
Oh, wow.
And you get your diagnosis almost immediately. Yeah. When they come back out, she comes back out into the waiting room a little bit. They call us in. They give us this big, beautiful graph to look at, this big bubble. And on the outside of this bubble is called dementia. And then on the inside are all these different styles or different types of dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Alzheimer's. If you don't know about Alzheimer's is the number one. 96% of people with dementia are going to, it's going to go into Alzheimer's. That's what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at all of this. Now I've dealt with friends with cancer, and by no means whenever I talk, do I ever try to compare diseases. That's just a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
But you do have to look at Alzheimer's a little bit different than you do even with a patient with cancer. Because when they came out and they actually told us, yes, we're 99% sure that Debbie has Alzheimer's. They cannot really tell that for sure without an autopsy. So you have to wait until the patient dies, and they have to do an autopsy to tell you exactly what is going on in the brain. There's no real way to read that at this point. So you're on board. You just got the diagnosis. Now you look at you look at your neurologist and you ask, you say, okay, what do we do now? What's the next step?
How did she take it?
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, everybody's crying. I mean, you're in total shock at that time because you kind of knew it going in, but you didn't want to actually admit that that's what it was going to be.
And I couldn't even imagine, because it's happening to her and she's obviously not remembering the lapses in memory.
Right.
So
and that's one of the things I said, and I learned this from, this is not my quote. I
Yeah.
heard a little girl on TV say this about cancer, and she said it about cancer, but with Alzheimer's, it actually rings the same way. The worst thing about having Alzheimer's is knowing that you have it. I mean, and that's the stage that she's in right now.
Yeah.
She's having a lot of trouble, but she also knows that she has the disease. She knows where the disease is where it's going to end. So you talk to your neurologist, they tell you you have it, and then you kind of accept that the little bit you can immediately in the office, and then the next question you ask is, okay, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What's the treatment?
Yeah, what do we do
What
next?
do we do? Okay. And they just look at you and they tell you, go home. Just go home, get your affairs in order. Because there's nothing there. There's not a cure, there's not a treatment, there's nothing like that. The only thing with a loved one that if it's any comfort whatsoever, they're not going to be going through a ton of pain, like a cancer patient or something like that.
Yeah.
Having to go through the chemo and all that type of stuff.
I feel like that's hard though, that there's no next step.
There's no, what I always like to say, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel is dark.
Yeah.
So, and that is a very, very hard pill to swallow. So at that time, we go out to the car and we just sit there and you talk and you cry and you try to figure things out the best you can. You're still in shock through all of this.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was like I was telling you earlier, at that time, you'll make the most important decision of your life at that time. And that decision is going to be how you're going to be able to handle what's coming up. And I don't mean that, you're going to plan your life all of a sudden sitting out in the car or something like that. But you know as a caregiver how you're going to be able to understand that and take that on. So that's a very important part, that whole first day, how to break this to family members, how to break it to other loved members. There's so many people in the Alzheimer's, people that have Alzheimer's, and I just really couldn't believe this when Alzheimer's finally got in touch with me, that they do not want to talk about it. They want to keep it on the down low. I don't know if it comes through as being a more embarrassing disease or something like that, but people just don't like to talk about their loved ones having Alzheimer's, where you can say with me, I'm completely different about this.
Alan's ready to talk.
I'll talk for hours about this given the opportunity, but I believe that was my calling, and that's what I was supposed to do, was to be able to reach out to other people and talk about this disease. So like I said, I didn't know what it was, so I ran home, Google's a great thing,
Yeah.
for the most part. And learned as much as I could about it, but was always searching in there for that one small thing to make it go away or
Yeah.
make it better or fix it. And it's just not there. It's just not there. It's a terminal disease. Sometimes happen to people faster, but sometimes it's a terminal disease that you're going to have to watch them go through for 20 years.
Yeah. So at this point in your story, you're accepting that caregiver role. So where does that take you now?
Actually, I had a good friend. One of the first calls I made was to a good friend that I knew was in home health care that took care of Alzheimer's patients. So I made the first call to her, and she immediately put me in touch with a woman by the name of Mary Williams, who actually works for the Alzheimer's Association. And she has become my saint. From the day that I made that call, she's been by my side through and taken us through every step that there is.
Oh, wow.
So that is one of the good things. I say one of the good things. There's a tremendous amount of good things that can come out of this all the time. But me getting involved with the Alzheimer's Association for me was a tremendous step forward for me to be able to accept this and understand it. So
wow.
And let me back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I've accepted this.
Yeah.
I maybe don't understand it all the time because you go through your day-to-day life is just completely changed.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into that. But
yeah.
But it's more of that first diagnosis part of it, I think, is the hardest part that you're going to go through. The next hardest part is going to be the acceptance of that loved one, whether it be your grandma, whether it be anything else. But it's usually, I've really found out with talking to caregivers, it's the spouse. It's that spouse that has lived with that person that has the hardest time getting through this as a caregiver. If it's your grandmother, if it's your aunt, if it's something like that, there's usually, you have a whole family bond there.
Yeah.
And you usually don't become the primary caregiver of that person.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are some differences in there when I talk to people and everything, where some are really very much overwhelmed by the whole thing, and others are just wanting to learn what to do when I take care of grandma or something.
Yeah, well, and it's, I mean, in the situation where it's a spouse, they've lived together their whole lives, so when those changes start happening, they're gonna know first.
Definitely, yeah.
You
see that. You see that happening all the time with them, and it's hard. You will fight that all the way up to the diagnosis, all the way up to the time. You know it's not going to be that. You know it's not going to be that. You know it's not going to be that. And then when it is that, it's time to change your life. It's time to start making some decisions. Unfortunately, I've also run into people that cannot deal with that. And I can't even imagine this, but we've actually talked to people that immediately left their loved one. They knew in their heart that I can't do this, and this is not going to be for me. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it just sounds horrible.
Yeah.
But what that did do, that gave someone else, another caregiver, the ability to step in and take care of the person with Alzheimer's, where the person that was never going to be able to do that or do it right has gotten out of the way. That's the way I look at that. So,
I think that's the best way to look at it, because if it's...
So I don't look down on anyone else.
Yeah.
Because everybody's journey is different in this.
Well, and people can only take so much.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas to someone it's like, oh, that's not a big deal. To someone else that could be, earth-shattering.
Oh, yeah. Life-ending.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to you about that here in a little bit, too. It got that bad with me and everything. So, yeah, things got bad. But after the diagnosis, talking to Mary and everything, I totally got on board. Totally got on board. They talked to me. They said, do you want to talk about this? And I was